He turned everyday clumsiness into box office gold, the quiet comedian who stole every scene. From Ghostbusters labs to shrinking suburban dads, Rick Moranis made millions laugh without ever stealing the spotlight. But at the absolute peak of his career, he vanished completely. No leaked emails, no bitter interviews, no goodbye wave from the red carpet. One day, he was everywhere. The next, nowhere. His disappearance wasn't about Hollywood pressure, rivalries, or fading fame. It was a personal earthquake that left the funniest man in the room silent for decades. This is the tragic truth about why Rick Moranis vanished. Imagine a Toronto teenager sneaking into radio booths, mimicking celebrities just to make the crew crack up. By 1977, that same kid, Rick Moranis, is a cornerstone of Second City television, delivering razor-sharp impressions of Woody Allen, George Carlin, and even the evening news anchors. Critics label him the show's stealth MVP. Viewers simply can't change the channel when his segments hit. Hollywood comes knocking hard in 1983. First up, a slick rock and roll fable called Streets of Fire, opposite rising star Tom Hulce. Then the role that rewrites his future, Louis Tully, the jittery accountant next door in Ghostbusters. One scene of him sliding across the floor, eyes glowing red, and boom, global recognition. The film hauls in almost $300 million, and suddenly Rick's face is plastered on everything from action figures to fruit snacks. The momentum never slows. 1987 brings Spaceballs, where he straps on the oversized helmet of Dark Helmet, turning a parody villain into a cultural punchline. 2 years later, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids catapults to #1 at the box office and refuses to leave. Families flock back week after week. The film spawns sequels, theme park rides, and a generation of kids begging for shrink-ray toys. Rick's bumbling inventor Wayne Soslinski becomes the ultimate dad hero. By 1990, his resume boasts 7 studio giants in 6 years, collectively earning over $800 million. Directors line up, scripts pile high, and talk shows plead for appearances. Everything points to a decade of unstoppable reign. Fame like that doesn't just vanish until something unimaginable pulled him away. A picture-perfect romance sparked on the set of a little-known Canadian show called Broadway Baby in 1985. Rick, already a rising name, meets Ann Belsky, a talented costume designer with a quick laugh and an eye for detail. They click instantly. Friends say the chemistry is obvious to everyone on set. Within months, they're inseparable, trading late-night diner runs for talks about building a life together. 1986, they married in a quiet ceremony, surrounded by close family and a handful of industry pals. No paparazzi, no magazine spreads, just vows and promises. A year later, their daughter Rachel arrives in 1988, a bundle of energy with her dad's expressive eyes. Rick juggles red carpet premieres with midnight feedings, proudly showing off baby photos to co-stars between takes on Ghostbusters 2. By 1990, the family grows again with son Mitchell. Rick's career is at fever pitch. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids dominates theaters, and he's fielding offers for everything from action comedies to voice roles. At home, Ann keeps the chaos organized, turning their Manhattan apartment into a cozy haven amid the Hollywood whirlwind. Weekends mean Central Park strolls, impromptu puppet shows, and Rick reading bedtime stories in silly voices that leave the kids howling. Life feels like a dream sequence. Blockbuster paychecks, award buzz, and a tight-knit family cheering from the sidelines. Ann sketches costume ideas while Rick rehearses lines at the kitchen table. They plan summer trips and dream of more kids down the line. Friends describe them as the couple everyone secretly envies, grounded, playful, and completely in sync. Everything is falling into place better than any script could write. Life seemed perfect, until a quiet diagnosis changed everything. The call came quietly, the way bad news often does. Ann felt a lump during a routine checkup. Nothing dramatic, just a small concern. Doctors ran tests, and the word breast cancer landed like a silent explosion in their living room. Rick canceled a press junket without hesitation and started treatment the next week. 1990, the same year Mitchell was born, became a blur of hospital corridors and hushed phone calls. Rick kept working, but only on projects that let him fly home every night. My Blue Heaven wrapped in Los Angeles, yet he was on the red-eye back to New York before the crew broke for lunch. Between chemo sessions, Ann still sketched costumes from our hospital bed, insisting the kids needed normalcy. Rachel, barely 2, clutched her mom's hand during visits. Mitchell, still in diapers, learned to nap to the hum of IV machines. Friends rallied, but Rick handled most of it alone. He learned to braid Rachel's hair, mastered pediatrician appointments, and memorized Ann's medication schedule better than his own lines. Nights were the hardest, when the apartment fell silent and the weight of maybe pressed against the walls. He'd sit by Ann's bedside, reading scripts aloud, just to hear her laugh at the bad dialogue. By early 1991, the cancer had spread. Treatments grew brutal. Ann's energy faded faster than anyone admitted. Rick turned down the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids sequel outright, no negotiation. February 28, 1991, Ann slipped away at home, surrounded by the family she'd fought to protect. She was 35. Rick held her hand until the end, whispering the punchline to a joke only they understood. The funeral was small, private, no cameras. Rachel asked why Mommy was sleeping. Mitchell, not yet 1, reached for a face that would never smile back. In a single winter, Rick Moranis went from Hollywood's busiest dad to a widower raising 2 toddlers alone. In the midst of mourning, Hollywood kept calling, but he made a choice no one saw coming. The scripts kept landing on his doormat, thick envelopes from every major studio. Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, Ghostbusters 3, a live-action Flintstones prequel. Each one promising bigger budgets, fatter checks, and another decade at the top. One producer even offered to fly the entire production to New York so Rick wouldn't miss bedtime. He read them all, then stacked them neatly in a drawer labeled Later. 1991, L.A. Story hits theaters, his last big ensemble laugh. 1992, Splitting Airs in London, a quick in-and-out shoot. After that, silence. No press tour, no magazine cover, no I'm taking a sabbatical statement. He simply stopped saying yes. Mornings became school runs and cereal bowls. Afternoons meant playground swings and scraped knees. Nights were storybooks and lullabies in the same quiet apartment that once echoed with Ann's laughter. Rachel started preschool. Mitchell learned to walk holding his dad's finger. Rick learned to grocery shop with a toddler on each hip, to braid hair with one hand while stirring pasta with the other. Hollywood didn't understand. Agents called weekly, then monthly, then gave up. Directors sent flowers on Ann's birthday. Rick sent polite thank you notes and kept the blinds drawn. He wasn't hiding, he was present. Parent-teacher conferences, pediatric checkups, first steps, first words, those were his new premieres. Voice work trickled in, safe, home-based, no travel. Gravedale High, The Magical Adventures of Quasimodo. He recorded lines in a blanket fort studio so the kids could nap nearby. When Disney offered Brother Bear years later, he signed on only because the booth was a 15-minute cab ride from the apartment. By 1997, Big Bully wrapped his last live-action role. The red carpet photos show a man smiling politely, eyes already scanning for the exit. That same year, Rachel started kindergarten. Rick never missed a single drop-off. Years passed in quiet routine, but whispers started to swirl about why he'd truly disappeared. The internet loves a mystery, and Rick Moranis became its favorite unsolved case. By the early 2000s, fan forums overflowed with theories. Some swore he'd cracked under the weight of grief, barricaded himself in a cabin somewhere, growing a beard down to his knees. Others insisted he'd secretly directed indie films under a fake name,
raking in festival awards while the world looked the other way. Tabloid headlines tried harder. "Rick's $1 million meltdown," screamed one cover, complete with a grainy photo of him buying milk. Another claimed he'd joined a monastery in Quebec, trading punchlines for prayer. The truth? He was at the grocery store, arguing with Rachel over which cereal had the better prize inside. Online sleuths dug deeper. Old co-stars got ambushed with questions. Dan Aykroyd shrugged on the talk show. "He's just being a dad, man." Bill Murray joked that Rick was probably inventing a machine to pause time so homework would never end. Both were closer to reality than the conspiracy boards. Then came the reclusive myth. Paparazzi staked out his Upper West Side building hoping for a disheveled sighting. They got Rick in sweatpants, carrying a backpack shaped like a dinosaur, waving politely before disappearing into the subway. No bodyguards, no tinted SUVs, just a guy who looked like every other parent rushing the pickup. By 2005, the rumors evolved. Some said he'd lost millions in a bad investment and couldn't afford to return. Others whispered he'd turned down Ghostbusters 3 because the script insulted Anne's memory. Rick finally broke silence in a rare 2005 Hollywood Reporter piece. "I'm not retired. I'm not broken. I'm home. My kids need dinner, and I'm the one who knows how to cook it without setting off the smoke alarm." The world blinked, shrugged, and moved on to the next scandal. Years passed in quiet routine, but then another blow reminded the world he was still out there, vulnerable. October 1st, 2020. A crisp fall morning in Manhattan. Rick steps out of his building, earbuds in, heading for a quick coffee run. He's 67 now, still trim, still rocking the same wire-rimmed glasses from the Honey days. No entourage, no disguise, just another New Yorker blending into the sidewalk crowd. A stranger approaches from behind. One punch, fast and random, cracks against the side of Rick's face. He stumbles, ribs slamming into a metal pole. The attacker, a 35-year-old with a history of street arrests, vanishes into the flow of pedestrians before anyone can react. Security footage later shows Rick on the ground, dazed, pressing a hand to his cheek. Bystanders rush over. Someone calls 911. Fractured cheekbone, bruised ribs, a concussion that keeps him foggy for days. Police track the guy down within hours. Turns out he'd been punching strangers all morning. No motive, no words. Rick spends the night in the ER, texting Rachel and Mitchell from a curtained bed. "I'm fine, just a headache. Don't worry." The next morning, the story explodes. Ghostbuster star randomly attacked, screams every outlet. Paparazzi camp outside the hospital. Fans flood social media with #JusticeForRick. He refuses to play victim. No tearful interviews, no lawsuits at first. In court, he asks the judge for leniency. The man needs help, not just punishment. The attacker gets 2 years anyway. Rick quietly files a civil suit later, not for revenge, but to cover medical bills and send a message. The incident cracks open the myth of his invisibility. For weeks, every grocery run becomes a photo op. He smiles, waves, keeps walking. Friends say the assault rattled him more than he lets on. Nights are jumpier, city noise feels sharper. But he refuses security, refuses to move, refuses to let one coward rewrite his routine. The world sees a fragile recluse. Rick sees a Tuesday that went sideways. As the dust settled, something unexpected hinted his story wasn't over yet.
The first whisper came in 2024, buried in a podcast no one expected Rick to join. Ryan Gosling, fresh off Barbie, casually mentions chatting with him about a Ghostbusters cameo. Fans lose their minds. "He's back!" Threads explode across Reddit. Rick laughs it off in a rare Zoom interview. "I told them I'd do it if they filmed in my living room." Then 2025 hits like a proton pack to the chest.
September 25th, Amazon MGM Studios drops the bomb. Spaceballs 2 is greenlit, Josh Gad directing, Mel Brooks producing, and Rick Moranis confirmed reprising Dark Helmet. Filming kicks off in Australia the same week. First set photos leak September 11th. Rick, 72, strapping on the oversized helmet, flashing that same mischievous smirk. The internet melts. He gives one print interview to El País in October. The break was never permanent. It just stretched. My kids are grown. Rachel's cutting films in Los Angeles. Mitchell's building apps in Seattle. The house is quiet. And Josh sent a script that made me laugh so hard I spilled coffee on page 3. No bitterness, no grand manifesto, just a guy who finally said yes again. Speculation runs wild. Will he cameo in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire now that travel's on the table? Disney quietly floats Honey, I Shrunk the Grandkids. Rick dodges every trap. One helmet at a time, he tells reporters outside a Sydney soundstage. Crew members leak stories. He still nails every take in one. Still does the kids' old bedtime voices between scenes. Still refuses a trailer bigger than a closet. The comeback isn't a roar. It's a gentle re-entry, like a friend sliding back into the booth after stepping out for air. 40 years after the original, Spaceballs 2 is slated for 2027. Early cuts screened to test audiences. One exec whispers the dark helmet scenes steal the movie. Rick flies home to New York between shoots, checks his mailbox, waters the plants, and smiles at the irony. The man who vanished is suddenly the most sought-after 70-something in town. Hollywood holds its breath. Will this be a one-off or the start of a late-career renaissance? Rick's answer is classic Moranis. We'll see what makes me laugh tomorrow. The vanishing act, it turns out, was never the end, just a very long intermission.
Picture the man who walked away from $800 million in box office glory, who turned down sequels before the ink dried, who chose bedtime stories over blockbuster premieres. That same man, Rick Moranis, didn't vanish because fame chewed him up. He stepped aside because love demanded it. Anne's illness, her final days, the two tiny humans left staring at an empty chair. Those weren't plot twists, they were his entire script. He raised Rachel and Mitchell in the same Upper West Side apartment where Anne once sketched costumes on the kitchen counter. No nannies, no tutors flown in from London. Just Rick figuring out pigtails and parent-teacher nights between voiceover gigs recorded in a closet lined with egg cartons. The world spun wild theories. He spun peanut butter sandwiches and bedtime lullabies in Dark Helmet's voice. The random punch in 2020 could have been the final curtain, another headline to feed the myth. Instead, it lit a fuse. 5 years later, he's 72, boarding a plane to Australia with a dog-eared Spaceballs 2 script, laughing at Josh Gad's jokes and nailing every take on the first try. The helmet still fits, the timing still kills. So here's the real tragic truth, the one no tabloid ever printed. Rick Moranis never needed Hollywood to validate his worth. He measured success in first steps, graduation photos, and the moment his grown daughter texted, "Dad, I'm proud of you." Fame offered him the world. He chose the harder, quieter path and built a life that didn't need spotlights to shine. Next time you rewatch Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and catch Wayne Szalinski's nervous grin, remember the man behind it chose real family over real family, and somehow, decades later, found his way back to both. Maybe the greatest comeback isn't the movie, it's the dad who proved you can disappear from the screen and still leave the biggest mark on the people who matter most. What do you think? Could you walk away from it all for love? Drop your thoughts below and let's keep this conversation going. Before we wrap this up, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss the next deep dive into the stars who shaped our childhoods. Drop a comment. Which forgotten icon should we unpack next? Smash the like if Rick's story hit you right in the feels, and share this with anyone who still quotes Dark Helmet. This is Retro Celeb Talk. See you in the next one.